Hello, KFC SuperCoaches. It is the Pre-Lockout podcast for round 21, head-to-head finals. So it's sudden death for a lot of SuperCoaches this week. I'm Tom Sangster, and Rob Sutherland is here as well, making 2 trades. You told us yesterday, Rob. Have you rethought that tactic? That will, of course, expend all your trades for the season.
I think, Thomas, the fact that I'm running out of trades now is a clear indication I've put little thought into any of my trading strategy. So I'm going to roll with that, and I'm going to burn them both. Yep.
Nice. All right. Happy days. I've got 6 left. I think I'm just going to go the 1 this week, obviously replacing Nathan Cleary with someone, and it'll likely be Adam Dewey at this stage. I'm going to go the pod route in a few head-to-head leagues with a fair bit of cash on the line, and I feel like I need a pod to get home in those competitions. Send your questions through. There's lots coming already. Jason Carter says, I've got 0 trades and got Moses and Cleary. Haha, see you next year. That's probably a pretty common thing going on in SuperCoach right now. Munster or Drinkwater in for Cleary? What are your thoughts there?
I think Munster's the safe play, and if I was, ranked up well in my head-to-head, that's the way I'd go, just to cover someone. And Drinkwater is like the Dewey play. It's the wild card. It's the guy that can score you 100 with the lower ownership. But if I'm going to go a wild card, I think I'd go with you and go the Tiger.
Yeah, I like Dewey. The only issue I've got with him is that he does play for the Tigers. Everything else points to him being a good buy. He's just gets stats out of nowhere, bust tackles, runs the ball a lot of attacking stats and kicking goals too. It all adds up, except I don't know if you can quite trust the Tigers. That's what's worrying me, but I still think no trade's perfect, so I may as well give it a crack. The most purchased player is Jerome Hughes. Thoughts on him? I find it a little bit strange that he is the most purchased player. His run coming up is not great after this week. So if you've got trades, I think it's a great play to bring him in this week for 1 week up against the Titans and then sell him next week.
Oh, yeah. If you had trades to burn, like some people do in head-to-heads, I know a couple of people who are talking they've got 2 or 3 boosts and 10-plus trades, then trading in, whichever attacking players are playing the Titans every week is probably a good play.
Yes.
I also think Hughes is probably the most bought because the best replacement for Cleary is Hines, who's already highly owned. So you'd probably say Hughes is the best play who isn't widely owned. Other than, I suppose, we'll talk others on the list. But Hughes does have 3 games over 100. I think the spine of the Storm are a good chance, maybe not Wishart, but certainly Munster, Hughes and Grant to get 100-plus this week.
Yep, I agree with that, but then it does get tough from there. He's consistent though, Hughes. Low score of 44 for the season, which is really good in an inconsistent position. Moving on to Nico Hines, you mentioned him, already owned by 55%, but I still think he is the best guy to bring in. I own him already, so I'm not going to go there, but his run home is just incredible. All bottom 8 teams.
Agreed. The Sharks draw makes, Hines, Mulatalo, Talakai, even Moylan, if you were really going to feel brave, all look pretty enticing.
Moving on to Adam Dewey, he's the 3rd most purchased. Oh, look, I've listed all the reasons why I'm bringing him in already, but everything makes sense except the fact that he plays for the Tigers. And hopefully the Tigers will just play with a little bit of freedom in the run home, given that they don't have much to play for.
Mate, they haven't had much to play for half the year.
Yeah.
I mean, except for the fact that they're highly paid professionals, and they should be playing for their paychecks. But yeah, like you covered it. Dewey is a real stat stuffer, and that's a good thing in SuperCoach with a ceiling in the low hundreds, mid hundreds. Yeah, he's a good get. I thought that about Matt Burton, who's a similar sort of player last week though, and he only scored 48. Yeah.
Yes, yep, indeed. Moving on to Val Holmes. Look, I wish I owned Valentine Holmes. I don't, and he's got a pretty good matchup this week against the Dragons. Then it gets a bit tougher. I think the time to get on was 2 weeks ago when he had those 2 really easy matchups in a row where he cracked out a ton, and I think it was 89 on the weekend. that was the time to get on. I still wish I had him in my team. Whenever I watch the Cowboys, I close my eyes when Val gets the ball because he does look dangerous. And if you're looking for a CTW to bring in, I mean, he's number one on the list, but you probably have bigger issues this week given the Cleary drama and the Moses drama and the Pat Carrigan drama.
Agreed with all of that. I suppose a lot of the people buying him are going Cleary out, and maybe they had Hines at fullback. So they're dropping him down and picking up Holmes that way.
Moving on to Adam Reynolds. Interesting pod. Look, you made the point yesterday that he's a different player at the Broncos, but I still don't see the massive scores coming from ARA, and obviously those dodgy groins could hit him at any time. He's an injury risk. It's a pod play. I'm not going there. I think Dewey is a better pod.
I agree, Tommy. I had another look at those numbers today. That's my one effort of preparation before the podcast. And he does have a couple of hundreds this season. And while the draw is not great, it's not terrible. He's got a decent floor with his goal kicking. The Broncos can score plenty of points. They concede a bit, but they score them. So, look, I don't hate it. I don't hate it. Yeah, I've warmed to it, I will say.
Jeremiah Nanai is an interesting one because killing it the last couple of weeks, hat-trick on the weekend. But are you chasing last week's points with Nanai? And again, going back to this point about the Cowboys, they've got a good matchup again this week, but then it gets a little bit tougher to end the season.
I get the feeling with Nanai, he might be one of those guys that a lot of the top 200 or top 300 have, because he's sort of got them into that position, with his big scores. So if you were up the top, I think you've probably done pretty well. You're probably pretty deep. Nanai is one of those guys, Nanai or Tapanae. If I didn't have one of those two, I'd be moving heaven and earth to get them.
Scotty Drinkwater is another one up there. We've spoken about him. We'll move on to your guy, Joe Tapanae, who's absolutely been killing it. I'll let you wax lyrical about him.
He has been. You know what it's like when you've got a guy on your team, you watch him closer, and there's a couple of things that you notice about Tapanae. One is his effort for work and his ability to turn it into points, and the other is he's a good-looking rooster. So I think there's two reasons to have him in your team. One is just easy on the eye, and the other is easy on the scorecard.
Yes.
What did he score? 113 with a sin bin. That's outstanding.
Yep, he's definitely easy on the eye. This is a little bit like your obsession with James Tedesco's buttocks. I'm getting flashbacks to that.
How can anyone not be obsessed with Teddy's buttocks? You see them so often. I reckon he's put Hindmarsh to shame. Hindy didn't have any titles in rugby league until, other than the butt crack showing. And now he's lost that.
Yes, exactly. Moving on to Daly Cherry Evans. I find this interesting that now that he's lost the goal-kicking duties, Manly look like they're on the wane a little bit. I know they've got all the players back from last week's drama, but still, I've got a lot of guys ahead of DCE as a replacement for Nathan Cleary.
Yeah, I feel this might be a bit of looking at best 5-round average and picking him up on that and maybe not drilling into where those numbers come from. I think it's a mistake.
And Munster's on this list too. I cannot talk anyone out of Munster. He's almost 10 points clear at 5/8. I think the Storm will come home pretty hard too. I think they'll be fired up to come home, and they've got much better chance at the premiership than they did a couple of weeks ago, given all these injuries floating around in the big teams like Carrigan going down for the Broncos, Moses going down for the Eels, and of course the injuries at the Panthers with the two halves going down too. So I think the Storm will come home really hard, and Munster's going to be at the centre of that. It's got the Titans this weekend, so definite C or VC.
He'll carry my C this week, yeah.
Let's do some questions. We'll literally take the first one that's coming in. Adrian Gretsch is asking, how many points do you get for being a good-looking rooster? Which is a fair enough point. Boys, is it time to jump on the new 5'8" god Wade Egan after his masterclass? Geez, it's getting late in the season and people are getting a bit silly, I think.
If Egan plays out the season there, then we'll have to be having this conversation in December, Thomas.
Hi, Tom and Rob. This is from Damien. Thinking of trading Cleary to Nanai via Jules and kick out to Murray. Thoughts?
I think Murray is the best value forward. He's just reliable, has just pumps out 75 seemingly easily, and he's available at under 600K. And I like the Cleary to Nanai move. I think it's a bit of a pod move, but yeah, you've put your cautions there, and he won't keep scoring 2 tries every game. But I could talk myself into it.
D Cannon is asking, Top Fan +1 is asking, would you play Crichton or McInnes this week? Good question, because Crichton's a bit up and down and he's relying on some attacking stats, which he didn't get last week. And then you've got McInnes, who is benefiting from the Finucane concussion.
My first thought is McInnes, right? I think Angus is too up and down and it's frustrating. But the only query on McInnes is that it's against your Dragons, down in the Shire. So, I keep saying it, but they can drag any team down to their level. And I suppose that's the risk here. But McInnes gets through the work. He's not really relying on attacking stats. I'd play McInnes.
Got a question here. Cleary down to Tedesco or Valentine Holmes with Jules? Who's more important out of those two? I'm leaning towards Tedesco, to be honest.
I'd lean Teddy there.
Yeah, Teddy's at the SCG as well this week, so he does tend to go a bit better there. What have we got here? Let's get on to the most sold players. Nathan Cleary, obvious, he does have to go. Taylor May is a bit less obvious because he is producing a keeper average at centre wing, but it's also going to be tough for him with the 2 halves out of that team as well. Look, I know Tungo did well on the weekend, but May didn't. Sometimes you get weeks where one of them goes big and the other one doesn't. Look, either way, it's probably a luxury trade to be selling Taylor May, but if you can go May up to Valentine Holmes, I'm not going to talk anyone out of it.
Oh, 100%. Even if I could go, if I was going to, throw a haymaker and hope, I'd go May to Mulatalo or one of the, even Connor Tracy. Like, just try to pick up one of the Cronulla outside backs and hope that nice draw on the way home, gets a couple of tons there.
Next up is Mitch Moses, who, of course, has that broken finger, so he's a sell as well. Jackson Hastings with the broken leg, unfortunately, picked up in that tackle from Pat Carrigan, who's been suspended for 4 weeks. Tolu Kula, look, I agree. I mean, you should have sold last week, probably, given that he didn't play due to that Pride jersey drama. And you probably should have sold before that round 17 bye previous to that. But he has done his job. He's made his money. Cash him in for a cheapie or upgrade him to Holmes or whoever it happens to be.
Yeah, the fact that he sat last week, allowed you to hold him and deal with something else. And this is the week because he's going to start leaking cash. Pat
Carrigan, as I mentioned, 4-week suspension, so he's out. Ezra Mam I find this a bit interesting. I'm holding because there are 2 games in the run home, and I can't remember who they're against off the top of my head, but there are 2 games in the run home where I will genuinely play Ezra Mam. It won't be this week, but I think next week is when he gets another good matchup.
I think next week he's got the Knights and he might have the Dragons in another one if we're going to talk positive matchups. So I agree. I think Mam's a player in 2 of the next 5 or the final 5.
Max King is also on the list. I mean, a cheapie who's just done an amazing job. I've got him as backup at with the duels that I can swing. He can back up my front row or my second row. So he's a great little swing player for me. I'm going to hold him. But if you could upgrade him to Cameron Murray or, whoever, a genuine keeper, then go for it.
Agreed. Yeah.
And then Nick Meaney out with a shoulder injury, should only be 1 week. And Joseph Suwali, interesting to see that he's on the most sold list or on the most purchased list almost every week. It seems to swing from week to week. Yeah,
so he'll score 30 1 week and everyone sells him, and then he gets 100 and everyone buys him. So, yeah, it's an odd one, isn't it?
Eamon's asking, we'll take questions till the end of the show. Eamon is asking, trade Clemmer or Max King? Looks like Clemmer's, facing the sack, so I'd be selling Clemmer first.
I would be surprised if Clemmer plays again this season the way things are going. I think he's got to go. Looks
like he's genuinely on the outer at that club. Cleary to Dearden. What are your thoughts on Dearden? Pretty good matchup this week, and then it gets tougher.
Yeah, it's not the worst. He goes in little spurts, doesn't he? But is Dearden available? Dearden's dual, isn't he? He's halfback 5'8".
Pretty sure, but yeah,
I don't know.
Hold me to it.
I'm not sure, but the one player I think we haven't mentioned is Dylan Brown. I would look at, say, a Dylan Brown over a Dearden. I know he's only 5'8", but if I could make that work, with Mitch Moses out, Dylan Brown, should take the teams sort of and run it, he and Gutho. So I think Brown's the one player we haven't mentioned.
A good question here. Cleary to Sam Walker as a bit of a pod. And look, Walker I was looking at the stats yesterday, and Walker is the form halfback of KFC SuperCoach. He's, I think it's either his 3 or 5 round average is well ahead of a lot of the other guys. So he is in form. He's got the SCG game this week, hopefully in decent weather. I could think of worse buys.
Yeah, I suppose the only thing against him is you're looking at 620k, but at this point of the year, we've all got loads of money. It's always that frustration, isn't it? You work really hard to build up your bank. And then, like me, you burn your last trade and you've got $300,000 sitting there unspent. And it's like, what a waste. But I agree. If I had the cash and wanted to really, take a punt, then Walker's far from the worst.
I'm not even sure if I should mention this question from Brett because I know what your answer is going to be. He's asking Clemmer to Tapanae or Cameron Murray. Surely you're going Tapanae. I'm going Murray, to be honest.
I'm going Tapanae. I think as good as Murray is for the price, what I like with Tapanae is you've got the dual position, which is really handy at this point of the year. You can move him around with Papali and the like. And as I say, he got 113. He did get a try, but it's 113 with a bin. He's playing 56, 60 minutes for the Raiders. He'll play every week. I think Tapanae is the guy.
Do you happen to know a bloke called David London? Is he a mate of yours? Because he's dropping a bit of shade in the chat.
He's not, but I'm sure he will be. I always enjoy being given a hard time. What's David saying?
Great to see you, Rob. I mean, fat fingers on the show.
Oh, that's true. We did discuss the fact that I have exceptionally fat fingers. I also have exceptionally fat toes. But I could go on with more of the appendages, but I'll stop there. It's a family show.
What are your thoughts on Alex Johnston? Interesting one, scoring lots of tries.
Yeah, sure. And this week, I reckon he can score more. It's not really a pod play, but, AJ's always been sort of rocks and diamonds and more diamonds of late. You couldn't argue against it. I mean, I think the Rabbitohs could score a lot this week.
Definite pod play. And I'll say that in the head-to-head finals, it's good to save your trades until late in the week. Do them as late as you can so you can react to what's happened already and either cancel out your head-to-head opponent or go with a pod against that as well. Having said that, that's the end of the Pre-Lockout podcast, round 21. Good luck in your head-to-head finals. Thanks for coming on, Rob, and we'll catch you for the Countdown Show, 7 p.m. Thursday. See you then.
Cheers.